old farmhouse on a 1,000-acre farm willed to us by my grandfather. The farm has been in our family for a few generations. My grandmother had died years before when my mother was a child, and my grandfather had raised my mom the best as he could. I still remember the day we moved in. I was 5. My mother was not her usual self that day. She seemed panicked at first, but after a while she seemed to settle down some. My father always took things in stride, and because he was a traveling salesman, he was hardly ever home to care much about what was going on with me or Mom. Then it happened. I first saw her when I was in our basement, when I was about 7. She scared me at first. I would always see her just on the edge of my field of vision. She must have been 5 or 6, and always wearing a dirty, puffy white dress with black and white dress shoes with a strap across the top. I could never glimpse her face real well. She always seemed to stay in the shadows. I once mentioned her to my mom, and she flipped out. She ransacked the basement looking for her, and then spanked me for lying and getting her worked up. She had asked me who told me about the little girl. I quickly learned to shut my mouth around my mom about my new friend. I started hanging around in our basement more and more, trying to talk and play with her, but she would rarely come out of the shadows, never muttering a word. For the next few years, I would just sit in the middle of the floor of the basement and roll a ball to her. She would roll it back, and that was the only contact we had till I was 10. At 10, she told me her name, Delilah Rose. She never seemed to age, always staying 5 or 6. By then, I learned that she could enter my dreams. I could finally see her face and her long, pretty blonde curls. She was beautiful. We would run around and play in my dreams, and she fast became my best friend. When awake, she stayed to the shadows and the darkness of the basement. The summer came during my 10th year, and I stayed in bed more and more, playing with my friend in my dreams. My mother became worried. She called the local doctor, and he came for a house call. The doctor told Mom I was fine, but I did need to get out more, so she pushed me more and more to go outside and play in the yard, get some sun. And I would sneak down to the basement and play with Delilah Rose. August came, and Delilah asked me for a favor. She wanted to be loved by a mother too, and asked if I would share mine. I thought about it for all of 2 seconds. Yes, 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 oh yes! We would be considered sisters then, and I always wanted a sister. She asked me to have my mom come down in the basement, and she would show herself to her, and then we could be a family. I rushed up the stairs to get my mom and slammed the basement door open. Mom, Mom, where are you? I need you in the basement. Please hurry, I screamed in joy at the top of the stairs. What is it? Why all the screaming? And I thought I told you to play outside. You are not supposed to go into the basement. But Mom, please hurry. I grabbed her hand and dragged her down the stairs. I want you to meet someone. Right then, my mom stopped halfway down the stairs. A worried look came across her face as she gasped and exclaimed, Delilah Rose. It must have been my fault. When my mom stopped, I continued down the stairs, still pulling her arm along. She teetered forward, losing balance. She screamed as she fell and bounced down the remaining steps. I was still on the steps, looking into the basement with horror. When I saw Delilah Rose step out of the shadow, her hair was melted to the top of her head. No long curls hung down from her face. Her face was twisted, charred, burned mass of plastic. Only one eye was visible as she walked towards my mother. Mama, you've come home, Delilah Rose said. She reached for my mom and grabbed her hand. She dragged my mom across the basement floor towards the shadows. My mom screaming the whole way as I stayed on the steps. I then noticed the faces of other women peeking through the shadows at me, mouths frozen open in eternal screams. I screamed and ran up the steps. I made it to the phone and called 911, and then I passed out. I saw Delilah Rose then in my mind, holding my mom's hand and walking away from me. My mom wouldn't look at me. Delilah grinned at me and waved. My dad is raising me now. They say Mom must have run away and left me alone for a few days. I'm told I must have dreamed everything, and no one will believe my story. I eventually got better and started running around outside more and more. I found an old burn pile out back, and in it, I found a burned-up doll with a name tag attached to it. Her name? Delilah Rose. I promised that when I'm older and grown up, I will never come back to this farm. Delilah has enough mothers.